Hey, Cavs fans, German, Spencer Davies with you. We are excited, not just for the start of the season, which is obviously tonight, Cavs and Raptors. We're going to get into that a little bit here. But we are excited for what is the debut episode of the to be named, yet to be named Cleveland Cavaliers on SI podcast. I guess we'll just stick with that name for now, the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI podcast. It's a mouthful. But we're working through some names. We're working through some different things. But the idea is, and it won't always be just Spence and I. We have a team of folks that work with us, and it might be different people on different days, just based off of my availability, Spence's availability, whatever. But the gist of this is we want to kind of have some consistent content, some consistent episodes for you, on top of the pre and post game stuff that we give you guys each and every single game, each and every single day for the most part, the practice reports, all those different things. And the idea is, like, those are more concise, those are shorter, those are, talk about what we're doing that day. But this can kind of give us a platform to dive into some things a little bit deeper with you, which I know Spence is looking forward to, because Spence loves talking hoops, man. And it's part of the reason why I love working with him, because he has such an eye for the sport. And so this platform will certainly give us some time to dive into a lot of those different things coming up. So Spence, happy to have our maiden voyage of this show with you. And I'm excited for the future episodes, but certainly excited for the season getting rolling today.
Most definitely, my man. And it's a place where I can kind of pour my heart out, too, about other teams. I have so much to talk about just from the games last night. I'm raring to go because the two games that tipped us off for the NBA season, 24-25, we obviously saw the Celtics do what they did to the Knicks, and then Lakers, Minnesota, so many thoughts, so many rants that I have in my mind already. But we're going to stick to the wine and gold, I think, today mostly. But I might sneak some stuff in there.
No, we have some stuff. We'll get to some stuff because like the LeBron James thing, we saw sort of the debut of that last night. I think that's what we're talking about. So we'll get into some of that stuff here coming up down the pike. But just in general, the Cavs season obviously beginning tonight, and we've heard so much about just the new sort of style of offense they're going to play, roles for different guys, all those different things. What are you sort of anticipating as we see the first iteration of that tonight against the Toronto Raptors? But then also, like, what is the foundation, like whatever foundation is kind of established tonight for that side of the ball in particular, that side of the floor in particular, how does it become like a building block for what you're going to see for throughout the 2024-25 campaign?
I think that it's going to be based on taking care of the basketball. That's going to be their biggest bugaboo early. They've got multiple ball handlers coming up. They know what they're doing, but you add in Evan Mobley, who's going to be seeing a lot of primary possessions, and he's going to have guys playing off ball that might not be used to doing as much as they were the last couple years. That's, I think, going to be the adaptation, if you will. Defensively, I think they're going to be okay. They're going to take a step back because they're going to be playing fast. This is going to be a natural thing that happens just with the fatigue and trying to get up to game speed. I know that's what the preseason for. Hopefully that helped them out in that respect. But it's just natural. If you're going to have more possessions on the other end, you're going to give up more possessions on the other side, especially if it leads to turnovers and whatnot. So that, I feel like, is going to be the biggest focus in the first few weeks here, is taking care of the basketball, making sure that everyone's cutting, everyone is in their right spots, and pushing that ball in transition. Those are the big keys, I think.
We feel like at this point we know the core four. And how they play, what their style is, because we've seen them for an extended period of time together, and that's part of the reason why there's been so much talk this offseason about, can they keep this together? Should they keep this together? Who fits? Who doesn't? Are Evan Mobley and Jared Allen redundant? Are Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland redundant? Those are sort of some of the conversations that obviously have been had. And Kenny Atkinson has waxed poetic about all these guys and what they bring to the table, and any new coach would. But like, how do you think those questions get resolved or answered? Because I do think like there are some of those things that it seems like there's a viability there. Like some of the questions people have brought up about the fit between all these guys, and specifically sort of the two pairings, have, I think, been valid through what we've seen to this point. But there is something to be said for if Kenny Atkinson can unlock that next phase of Evan Mobley's game, and if he can sort of serve a different role than just being like the rim protector that Jared Allen is and playing closer to the rim all the time, then yeah, maybe they can fit. And we know how important Jared Allen is to the defensive end of the floor in particular. Like, I think there's a world where those two guys can coexist. But it's about Kenny Atkinson kind of finding that. So, like, how do you think that all sort of shakes out when we've had these questions about these two sort of pairings, both at the guard position and the center / forward position, and now it's about like this new coach coming in and seeing if he can find a different version of these players that maybe make it so that it does fit a little bit better.
That fifth man's very important. I think Max Strus really fits in well with them. Unfortunately, as we know, he's out for the first 6 weeks, so they're already behind the 8 ball in that respect. But Dean Wade coming in, I think, gives them a little bit more of an edge as far as the offensive glass, as far as having a switchable defender on there that can really guard 1 through 5. Evan Mobley can do the same thing out there on the perimeter. Donovan Mitchell's been really good at ball pressure. As we saw in the preseason, Darius Garland is hunting those passing lanes when that pressure comes from his teammates. So they've got a little bit of dynamism in that situation. With me and these pairings, I don't know who you want me to start with, but I guess after watching last night with Minnesota, for example, I don't know why people think 4-5 has to be a monolith. It's not. Evan Mobley's completely different than Julius Randle. They both play power forward. And obviously, Evan Mobley plays 5 in the backup 5 sometimes, and he will be playing the 5 in a lot of these spread lineups. But skill sets are so different between a lot of these guys. They're not the same, even if they have the same position. Evan, as we've seen, has the ability to create. He has the ability to go downhill and look for his own shot and make reads, look for cutters, not be out of control. As long as the handle continues to improve, it's going to work. Jared Allen was awesome in the preseason. He was all around the rim. He was in certain situations without Evan Mobley on the floor. And when Evan Mobley was on the floor, Evan was looking for him on high handoffs. Jared Allen can pass out of the roll. There's all sorts of possibilities with these two. And again, I don't get why we continue to have amnesia. It worked in 21-22. I don't get why it's or 22-23. It was so good between those guys. And I feel like finding that right fifth man is the big the big what do you want to call it? Key, I guess.
Yeah.
But with Darius and Donovan, for them, it's about getting shots up. And for Darius in particular, it's about taking threes. It's about taking 8 to 10 a game. And he can be so effective in that if he doesn't turn them down. And he didn't turn many down in the preseason. Donovan can get to his spots whenever. We should never have to worry about Donovan on or off the ball. Darius can be such a weapon, as we know, in the pocket, or as a pocket passer, I should say, with either big. He can come around screens, catch shoots are a big emphasis. Saw Donovan and Darius playing a lot in the corner in these early games. So look out for that. Different spots for guys on the floor. Dean Wade, same thing. He's not just going to be a static spacer, as Kenny Atkinson likes to talk about. He's going to have him cutting a little bit. He's going to have him trying to get at some off-ball actions because Dean's a big guy too. He can go to the rim and finish with momentum without the ball. So there's a lot of possibilities here. I think a new coach can do a lot more than people think in this situation.
Yeah. Well, and obviously because that's the big change they made this offseason, that's what they're banking on. They're banking on Kenny coming in and being able to do that with Evan. I think we saw some of the early what's the word I'm looking for? We saw some of the early vision of what
evolution?
What he wants to do with Mobley in the preseason. And I do think too, like, that could be, you mentioned the fifth guy being the key part of this, like whoever that wing is, whether it's Max, whether it's Dean, whether it's Okoro in some sort of role.
Karras.
Yeah, like
there's all sorts of combinations they can go with.
Right, how that matters. I think though, like if and I've been saying this for the last couple of years, I think if you have the coach that can unlock certain parts of Evan Mobley's game, that we've seen inklings of, but we haven't seen like in its full effect or its full form because he's still a developing player. I do think like there's something to be said for that being almost like the straw that stirs the drink, and that then gets everybody else playing better off of each other. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, Donovan is your star. He's going to handle the ball a lot, and he's going to sort of be one of the focal points of this whole unit. But like you get Evan Mobley more involved in handling the ball, you get him doing some things, whether it is taking a few more threes a game or whether it is being able to drive to the basket. I've always said if he can play like Giannis, like that unlocks a lot of things for this team. And he doesn't just have to play in the paint all the time because you have Jared Allen down there and he can guard in the perimeter. So I do think there's a version of this that works. And listen, all due respect to JB Bickerstaff, we know he was a defensive-minded coach. I don't know that he was ever going to be able to turn Evan Mobley into the player that we think he can be and that lots of people think that he can be. And so there's something to be said for, if this is the right hire, if you brought in the right guy in Kenny Atkinson, he should be able to do that with Evan. And then that might be the thing that just gets this group really playing really well together. So I know I was hypercritical. I was one of many during the offseason about like they need to do more. I don't think they should run it back with the core four. And I think there's reasons why they maybe should have tried to do some things differently or built this roster differently because this league is always evolving. I mean, look what the Knicks did this offseason. I know they just got blown out last night, but it's game one of the season. They're going to have to they're going to take some time to figure some things out, I'm sure, on their end. But like you see all these teams that went and got better, and it's like, man, like if you're staying the same, sometimes that means like you're like way behind the eight ball now, like you're falling behind. So I stand by some of those comments, but I do think like I am excited now that the season's here to see if Kenny can help this group realize its full potential that maybe we hadn't seen under JB and that we'd kind of been waiting for the last couple of years.
And as we've talked about, I've been absolutely going to bat for Kenny Atkinson since the Brooklyn days. I think he got a raw deal there. There was stars that took over, and it stopped what he was building. And he never got the chance to show whether he was capable or not of going into the playoffs. And let's not forget, too, this guy learned under championship coaches like Ty Lue, and he spent time with Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr has dealt with so many egos at this point of his career. We know that Ty Lue did here, too. So he's seen how those guys handle their business in that aspect. Kenny gets out there, and he's working out with these guys one-on-one. After he talks to us at practices, you see him out there contesting threes for Isaac Okoro. He's getting into guys' grills during the 5-on-5 sessions and scrimmages. You see it just messing around with Darius out there, just putting a hand up or getting a body on somebody. That goes a long way. It really does. And Kenny enjoys this. You can just tell that he's just a basketball savant when you have these conversations. And even when you mention the slightest bit of a suggestion, he'll actually take it in consideration. And that doesn't happen very often with the media. Usually coaches can be pretty dismissive, and you bring something up and he actually might think, that's actually not a bad idea as he stares into space. So I can't imagine what the conversations are like with the players here. And he is imaginative. He has guys to the corners. He has guys to the wing spots, and then he has somebody that's obviously going to be darting towards the rim. But expect a lot of 5 out, expect a lot of differing sets in the half court. But if they reach their goal, they're not going to play too much in the half court because they're going to be getting stops and then getting out on the break.
Yeah, it's a good point. As always, I think it's going to be fun to see how this thing looks, even if early on it's a little bit sloppy and there are some turnovers, as you alluded to a number of times, just because they're going to be filling some things out. But
it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I just want to prepare everybody that it's going to happen. Evan hasn't had this high of a usage in his career yet. So there's going to be some miscommunications, maybe a bad handoff here and there. Something that's actually pretty common is when guys are increasing their pace, they might get a steal on one end and then think they have a window to make a pass on turning over the turnover. That happens a lot, so look out for that. Got to be better on the defensive glass. Transition defense is going to take a hit if they're putting an emphasis on offensive rebounding. So just preparing everybody, if that doesn't go perfectly the first few weeks, not to panic. That's just something that is going to take time to get used to, because the JB Bickerstaff led teams always got back on defense if the shot was missed, like, or most of the time they did. The increase in pace was actually there last year. The execution just was not. But you're going to see a lot of changing speeds, being able to play at different speeds is a goal of this team too. I thought Kenny put it funny. He said there's 3 different type of speeds you want to play. You want to play, a healthy pace is that middle ground. You want to be able to slow it down when it comes to the playoffs. And then he called the other one Autobahn. So that one, that's the faster one, which I feel like they're going to be in that shift most of the time, depending on who's in, obviously. But they've got the spread lineup and they got the big lineup. Those are the 2 so far that are probably going to see the most time together. But there's a lot more to this than just the core 4 as well.
You mentioned obviously way earlier that Max Strus we know is out at least 6 weeks with the ankle injury. What D Wade likely going to be the guy who sort of mans that spot first up here over Caris LeVert, but I know you talked during some of our practice reports this week about that also being sort of matchup based a little bit as well. But is this a situation like if Dean is playing really well with the starting 5, could he hold on to that role, you think, even when Max gets back?
If a good thing's working, why fix it? Especially if Kenny Atkinson's a man of his word, I think he is. We're going to be seeing 10, 11 guys playing this year. So what difference does it make?
What that's going to be so bizarre from the JB Bickerstaff era where he was like 7 to 8 deep, 9, and that was it.
I would say 9 guys, or it is going to be a lot different, and people are going to have to get used to that. He's going to utilize that depth. Celebrating their depth has been a message throughout training camp, throughout the preseason. So I don't think he's lying on that.
I think you and I know John Rutter and I, we have talked the last 2 to 3 years about this team being a very, very deep team. And then because of the nature of the way JB Bickerstaff will coach, we never really got to see the full potential of it, especially during the regular season. That's why we always had these arguments about how many minutes Donovan was playing towards the end of the year. But I'm excited about a coach that's going to take advantage of the fact that this team does seem to have a pretty deep roster overall, which is a good thing.
And it's important because that means you give your stars, your core 4, kind of a leeway a bit here. They're not going to be playing 37, 38 minutes a night. You're going to probably take that back down at least a few minutes per game. And you want to be at your strongest going into mid-April, because that's when the playoffs start. That's when you need your guys. You can't have those wear and tear injuries that we're so accustomed to seeing here in Cleveland, be it Caris LeVert, be it Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, that happened to early last year with his knee. So those are the things that they want to avoid in managing a rotation and making sure these guys are fresh going into mid-April. And not only just that for the main guys, but for the guys who might be needed in a pinch for the postseason, getting experience, getting valuable experience during the regular season of being able to be put in situations, whether it's a fourth quarter crunch time ATO, or if they're guarding somebody down the stretch when one of your players is missing or hurt or something like that. You never know what's going to happen. You need to have guys who are ready for the moment, and that's what managing a rotation like that and utilizing your depth can do.
Speaking of depth, and we talked a little bit about it after practice yesterday, for those that might have missed it, about this idea that because Max Strus is out and Dean Wade or Caris gets sort of lifted into the starting 5 or promoted to the starting 5, it opens up an opportunity for somebody on sort of that second team or beyond to get some reps, some time on the floor and rotate in. And I threw out Jaylen Tyson's name because Jaylen, as you guys have probably heard, is he's a fun, he is a great personality. And I think fans are he's going to endear himself to this fan base with the way that he talks, the confidence that he brings to the table. And since he got here, the day he arrived after the draft, he has been adamant about the idea that, he wants to crack the rotation in some capacity. He wants to play. He thinks he's good enough to do that at this level. And what do you think the Dean Wade or Caris, whichever it ends up being, depending on the night, being sort of moved up to the starting 5 means for his opportunities. Because Spence, like I said it yesterday, but this like anytime there's a rookie player, anytime there's a young player with potential, it does get fans excited, even if it's not like, the biggest name player. I mean, think about like Amani Bates, like the potential that he brought to the table when they drafted him 2 years ago had everybody excited. And so much so that in the playoffs last year, you had people saying, where's Amani Bates? He should be playing more. And obviously we know that's a little silly because he's still a very raw player. But yeah, like Jaylen has talked the talk in terms of, I think I can play in this league. And there should be some excitement over potentially seeing him get minutes early on in the season. And then I think conversely, Spence, like if he does get minutes now or through these first several weeks, or if he sort of supplants himself as a guy that deserves to be part of the rotation, I think that does bode well for somebody like him come playoff time when you're looking for guys to step up in smaller chunks of time, and you need to give Donovan Mitchell a blow or something like that. Like, okay, you get Jaylen Tyson out there in a certain spot. And I'm not saying he's going to go replace Donovan Mitchell. I'm just saying, like, in general, like when you're sort of giving these guys a breather, that stuff can matter on the back end of things when they get minutes now and they get time now because they have some of that experience and they have some confidence out on the floor.
Just off the bat with Jaylen, he's the first one in and last to leave. The old cliche, it's a real thing. He's working with Damari Carroll after practice and DJ Ham. Whether it's pull-up jumpers, shooting threes, free throws, he's a gym rat. And that kind of stuff gets the attention of coaches. And Kenny Atkinson has described him as a quote-unquote find-a-way guy. If your head coach is talking about you that way early as it is, sounds like he's going to get into this rotation because they're already down a man. So he's going to find a way to crack it. And I think it's probably going to be at the 3 in that backup role, so to speak. Because you think about it now, you're probably going to have, let's go through the bench. Ty Jerome is your backup 1. Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Sam Merrill's probably going to play. George Niang's definitely going to play.
That'll get people excited.
So Jaylen Tyson's probably that 11th guy if I had to guess. So I don't know if that's going to be at the 2 or the 3, possibly the 4 in some spread lineups. But Jaylen's going to get on the floor by using his defense. He's going to get on the floor by grabbing rebounds, by diving on the floor for loose balls. And that's who he is just by his DNA. And if that's in 10 minutes, if that's in 15 minutes, if it's in 6 minutes, he's going to find a way on the floor. I don't know, again, what position. Probably the 2 or the 3 just by seeing this roster construction. But I see him getting on there. And I think indicative of that was Jaylen Tyson getting minutes with the core 4 the other day in preseason. So I think that's a solid indicator.
Talking about the Cavs as they get ready for their season opener here on, again, the nameless Cleveland Cavaliers on SI podcast. We're working on that for you.
We got it. We will work on that.
Yes,
and
we have some ideas.
Brainstorming.
That's right. We have some ideas. We're going to pick some other people's brains. Make sure there's no. We don't want to get in any legal trouble for stealing somebody else's podcast name. So we're doing all the logistical legwork that's needed to make sure we get a good name for this thing. But Spence, we know that Toronto has been a team that is giving Cleveland some fits the last couple of years because they are their length. They're just a very long, very tall team, and they play pretty good defense. Despite maybe, they're certainly not the team that won the NBA Finals not so long ago. That's kind of been stripped down, but they're sort of they're a young team that plays defense really well and can clog up lanes, passing lanes, deflect the basketball and make some plays that way. We'll take a few minutes here just to kind of get your outlook on what the Raptors bring to the table, what challenges you think they're going to present to this Cavs team with a new head coach running sort of system. To tip off the season later tonight.
I feel like the North is one of the toughest places to play, especially in your opener. It's happened to the Cavs before. Donovan Mitchell's debut in the wine and gold. Darius Garland getting his eye poked out by Gary Trent. Gary Trent is no longer there.
Bad memories.
I think it helps that RJ Barrett will not be there. Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, all those guys are out. I know I reported yesterday before the injury report came out, of course, on our Spencer Squared Cavs report, that RJ Barrett would be a point of emphasis, but he was just not able to go today. So that's helpful for them, for the Cavs, that is. Still got to key in on guys like Scotty Barnes. Scotty's a very unique player. He's good in transition. He's able to be the ball handler in pick and roll situations. Jakob Poeltl is one of the best screeners, one of the best rebounders, one of the best rim protectors that the NBA has. The team itself, I don't know how much success is coming. Second year of Darko there, instilling some good principles, but just I don't know if there's enough shooting there. I like Grady Dick to have a good season. He's going to have a little bit more of a role. Emmanuel quickly, as we know, can just go off for 30 in a heartbeat the way that he plays.
Everybody loves Grady Dick for what it's worth.
He's in store for a lot more minutes, I'll tell you that much. But Chris Boucher has been around for a while, solid 5 guy that can, switch up, play some good
and
defense.
Kenny talked about him a little bit, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see, with Noah Olynyk in there, if Ulrich Chomche gets some minutes for them. He's a two-way player for them. He's had a good preseason. But yeah, I'll look on their season. I don't know if I can go too in depth on that because I'm not around the team, but just in terms of a matchup, Cavs are just going to have to be sound and in transition defense if they're not getting the boards on the offensive end, because they are going to try to crash, but they also have to try to keep Toronto off the offensive glass as well, as Kenny mentioned yesterday. So that's going to be a big point of emphasis, but Scotty Barnes is the head of the snake. We know that. And I'm looking forward to seeing Evan Mobley's approach to facing Scotty Barnes, as we know the Rookie of the Year race between those two.
Yeah, it was controversial a couple years ago. You're right. I thought you were like nodding. You were gonna like add another thought, and then you didn't. And I was like, yeah, it was controversial.
No. Just a little extra, gas in the tank in that one, I think, just for Evan and whenever he sees Scotty.
Yeah. No doubt about that. And yeah, I actually think this is kind of a beneficial first matchup for them because of a lot of the things that you laid out, but because they are sort of a defensive minded team, because they have that length. You mentioned like moving the basketball a lot more on the offensive end, and Evan sort of carrying a lot of the workload on that end of the floor, bringing the ball up, the ball going through him more. So if he's going to have to go through some growing pains, if he's going to have to learn from some of his mistakes, like, yeah, why not have it night one and early in the season where he can sort of get some of that some of that out of his system and kind of learn from those things immediately. So I know it's only one game of 82. There's a lot more to go from here. So this isn't going to define him by any means, what he looks like in the system. But I am interested to kind of see how he kind of learns some things and what that looks like as they try to play with more pace, as they try to crash the offensive glass. And I think it's kind of a good litmus test for them in that way. On the flip side, when they come home, they will be seeing a familiar face along the Pistons sideline on Friday, and JB Bickerstaff. We don't have to go too in depth with that one because I know some time to talk about it coming up here with some of our post game and practice stuff over the next couple of days. But what are you expecting on the reverse end from the Pistons coming into Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on Friday from a newly coached JB Bickerstaff team?
Yeah, as we spoke about before, don't expect the pocket passes to be open. The preseason, those lanes were shut down. JB has the scout on Darius, Garland, and Evan and Jarrett and even Donovan. So defensively, he's going to know what their strengths are. It's up to Kenny to adjust to that, to figure out how to get them away from the passing lanes, play more of a perimeter game. It's not going to be a pretty game because JB it's just how it's the pace that his teams play at, and it's the physicality the JV's teams play at. So that I feel like is going to be a big key, is the physicality, who's getting on the glass, and the way you're going to beat JB is I think is in the open floor and forcing his teams into mid-range shots and into bad shots and bad predicaments, which you can do with a young team, but let's be honest, Cade Cunningham, another year, he's going to be good. Jaden Ivey on the rise. Love Jaylen Duren. I think Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley as veterans coming in there is going to help their learning curve. Early on, you might see some more flashes than you may see in January when things get a little rougher. I think guys get a little tired. Maybe there's some injuries. I feel like the Pistons could get off to a good start. Hopefully it's not at the expense of Cleveland. But obviously he knows this team, so that won't be an easy game by any stretch.
You mentioned it being a benefit, obviously, because JB knows the scout on all these guys. He coached them. Is it conversely, though, like how much of a benefit is it for the Cavs to kind of know what his style is and know what he wants to do with certain players, even though they're different players than what he had in Cleveland?
Guard the high pick and roll.
Yeah.
Guard the high pick and roll. There wasn't a whole lot of secondary and tertiary actions within JB's offense when it came to the half court. He not too focused on getting out in transition. I know they tried to last year, and they did in spurts. So
Yeah.
JB knows the game. It's just that maybe sometimes it gets a little bit stagnant in the half court. So the Cavs are really good against stagnant offense. If you have switchable defenders like they do with Evan and Jarrett, Dean Wade especially in the top of the perimeter, and Donovan gets steals. Darius has been getting steals, so that part I could see going a long way. I would take the under if you want to go that way. I would take the under on Friday in that one.
That's fair. Between the Cavs probably turning it over quite a bit because they're still kind of feeling some things out, and JB being a defensive-minded guy, that's some good betting advice right there from Spencer Davies. We need to do like a betting segment, betting the Cavs. You can call it Davies Dimes or something like that.
Don't get me going there. Spinny suggestions.
So yeah, we'll have to come up with something. I like that. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier in the week. I am going to put some faith in the Cleveland faithful and bet that JB Bickerstaff gets cheered during the announcement.
I hope so too.
I'm putting some faith. I understand why they booed him in the playoffs last year. Fans were sort of over JB at that point. Fine. I'm going to bank on the fact that they recognize in sort of, as the dust has settled on his firing, that he did some good for the organization, got things on track after LeBron left the second time, and that he has kind of set the table for Kenny Atkinson to take over and hopefully take this team to the next level. But I'm counting on you Cavs fans to come through and not boo JB Bickerstaff during the starting lineups. I know he's on an opposing team now. I get that we do that sometimes with players that used to play here like Kyrie and others. But I'm gonna bank on you guys giving him a nice little. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a cheer. Just a nice little round of applause when they announce JB's name. I think that's fair.
I like the round of applause idea. I'm gonna say.
Does he get one of those videos that they do? When
he's got to. He's got to.
Do you like that they do that for like everybody now? Like it used to be like reserved for like the top guys. It was like, oh yeah, LeBron, when he comes back, we'll give him a video. And I get why they did it with like Kyrie, or tried to do it with Kyrie for years, and then he just kept dipping out on playing in Cleveland, so they never could actually unveil it. Like he was part of a championship team. I'm thinking college for some reason. So I get why they did it for those guys. Like it just feels like now every guy that comes back from like previous teams gets some sort of tribute video.
Definitely a social media post, that's for sure. Even the 15th guy on the bench gets a social media
Johnny
post.
Manziel came back to town for a Cavs game, and they gave him like the crystal ball thing that they do on the sideline. It's like, okay, guys, come on. It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm curious, honestly, if you want to know what I'm curious about, this has nothing to do with the Cavs. I'm curious what kind of reaction Miles gets if Miles is at that game Friday.
Oh, that's a good point.
They aren't home this Sunday, so
that's fair.
I'm assuming that a partial owner of the Cavs is going to be at that game.
He does love showing up to Cavs basketball games, and I know there's I know Roddy McLeod said he was going to be there, so maybe Miles is going to be part of his posse and show up. I don't know, but that's a good point by you. A couple last things I want to hit on before we wrap up this pilot episode of the to be named Cavs on SI podcast. We talked a little bit about just expectations. Real quick. Are we establishing that the expectation should be at least conference finals?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Unequivocally. And like I told you yesterday, I hate expectations.
Yeah.
I think they're a thief of joy. As a fan, I don't know why you have them. Because most of the time, if you have expectations, the season goes down the drain. If you don't have expectations, they surprise you. I don't know why no one has a middle ground. I don't know why no one has any emotional intelligence anymore when it comes to sports fandom. But that's where you should live, right in the middle. right in the middle.
I
Even
can
keel.
relate to that because I tend to set the bar lower for my teams, and then if they do better than it, I'm pleasantly surprised. That's what I like about being the sports fan that I am, because I never feel as disappointed when I do it that way. But so I agree with you on that. But I'm with you that I think the expectation has to be conference finals just because of the kind of natural progression that's occurred here. I'm curious though, what like for a legacy standpoint, how much does Donovan Mitchell need a run like that? Because even he has talked about how he just doesn't get put in the upper echelon of guys in this league, or he's not talked about that way because he hasn't had the playoff success. So how important do you think something like a conference finals run is, not just to the fans, not just because you have expectations for this team, but for somebody like Donovan Mitchell, who we now know is here to stay for the foreseeable future, and sort of establishing himself and sort of changing what is said about him and his legacy a little bit?
I'm sure it's a driving factor for him. That guy just loves, he wants to be great. He has a desire to be great, and he is a leader by example. He's somebody who has every tool in the bag. It's the 3-level scoring, the grit on defense. He's somebody that goes after loose balls. He's somebody that grabs every loose pill with trying to get possessions. He's somebody that just wants it. That's somebody that really is great. I know I'm kind of talking in circles here, but there's nowhere else to go with Donovan, because that's what he has to do. He just has to get to that conference finals, get to a finals to be put into that conversation. And we know the media machine drives the conversation on who's great. Let's be honest. If you're not in a big market town, usually that you don't get that kind of love, I guess. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's probably dealing with the same thing. Giannis is still being pushed away from Milwaukee, even though he said time and time again that he's committed there. But Donovan's great.
By the way, Giannis had an interesting quote the other day when he was asked about, like, I'm just saying, they asked him about like guys getting traded away, and he was like, yeah, I mean, anybody can get traded away. I could get traded away if we don't win. And it was like, oh, is he setting the table? Just expect to be that this thing's going to get blown up if they don't do something this year? I thought that was interesting. But anyway,
even if that's the case, this is why I hate our industry. I really do. I really do. Oh, what's the next thing? Oh, what's the next thing after the next thing?
We all have ADD in that regard. Yes, you're right.
It's true. It's true. It's the piece of candy. But Donovan, no, that's definitely a driving factor for him getting to the conference finals, helping his legacy by making sure that this team and I thought this was interesting too at practice, because someone asked him, I think it was Fedor, great question. If Evan's growing the way he has, does that mean you have to change the way you play? And Donovan said, yes and no. I still have to be me, but I have to allow that room to grow for this team. I need to allow this team to develop while I stay myself and, change a little bit of what I do. But like at his core, Donovan's going to be the leader of this team. He's going to be the all-star. He's going to be the guy that pulls guys aside. He's connecting well with Kenny. Kenny and him talk every day one-on-one after practice. Yeah. And I mean, you should when it's your star and your head coach. I'm not saying that's something new. We're not reinventing the wheel here, but it's just good to see that they've already established that relationship. Well, and Kenny flew out. Kenny flew out when Donovan was across the pond. And when he was,
I remember the pictures of him at his camp. Yeah.
Yep.
But no, and all that. What I was going to say though is, and that's another part of this kind of relationship I'm curious about, because Kenny, part of the criticisms of him in Brooklyn was that he didn't handle the egos of the star players well and sort of managing that within a locker room. And I think he has learned a little bit more about that, because his time in Golden State, I mean, those are some of the biggest superstars in the game. Well, you had 3 of them all on one team, and you had to kind of see some of those things. So to be able to Steve Kerr's brain on that, because he's done a tremendous job with that team over the years when he had Kevin Durant there and others. Like, I think that's valuable experience for him. But yeah, I do think like it's like the expectations are the expectations from the fans. But I think like even Donovan Mitchell does hold himself to that standard, because he's talked about it. And absolutely. So for him, I think he knows like how this season goes. Making a run deeper in the playoffs than what he has is an absolute like it's an absolute goal for him, but it's something that's definitely weighing on his mind because he knows if he's going to be talked about a certain way, that he's got to at least get to that stage first and then maybe even excel past it to be considered one of the all-time greats. But it's nice now because we know he's going to be here. We hopefully get to see him and experience that with him here in Cleveland rather than him doing it somewhere else and feeling like he has to fill that somewhere else. So that's the good news of it. Spence, last thoughts. Did you watch Bronny and Bron's debut last night in LA? Did you see the commercial where he was pouring? Or it wasn't really. I guess it was a commercial. I don't know. It was like a fun Nike. It was a Nike. It was a Nike. He poured Fruity Pebbles in his car. What did you think of the debut of the father-son duo, first time in NBA history?
I mean, you can't take anything away from the family now.
No.
The route to the NBA you can question, sure. But if Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. are showing up, you know it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. Yeah. They're the only two families to do it. I don't care how you feel about it. That's legacy right there. That's impressive as hell. And, good for LeBron, good for Bronny. Now you're probably going to see Bronny scale back a little bit, maybe play more in the G League, develop a little more. Is it obviously getting help to get to the league? Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can take away that kind of moment from him. And that's LeBron's probably greatest accomplishment as far as in his eyes. Family and obviously everything that Bronny went through with the heart. Like, you can't take away from that. But can I just? That Minnesota game had me so mad throughout. I just want to say, because this is our podcast. This is part of our podcast, I should say. I just don't know how the Timberwolves expect to space the floor with the lineup they have out there, the starting five. I have zero idea.
They traded Cap, but that's just my opinion. I don't know. Start DiVincenzo. I don't know.
Naz Reid has to be on the floor at all times, and it'll be one of Julius Randle and Gobert out there.
And that was what we said. Spence, we texted about this. I said the reason that Cat and Gobert could work together was that Cat spaced the floor for you. Randle and Gobert are redundant. Like, we talk about redundancies with the Cavs. Like, those two literally are like redundant players. Neither of them are 3-point shooters.
That's why I kind of brought up that comp between a 4 and a 5, because that is a true 4 and a 5 that cannot work together.
Yeah.
Unless you put the ball in Julius Randle's hands, but then you're putting Anthony Randolph off ball, or I'm Anthony Randolph.
Yeah.
Let me show my age by saying Anthony Randolph. Anthony Edwards can't put Anthony Edwards off ball and take away the momentum that he has because he was the guy that got him back in the game yesterday.
I love that conversation.
That's my rant on that. Sorry, talking.
No, I was gonna say I love the conversation about LeBron turned into X's and O's from Spence, because that's how your mind works, man. I love it.
It's just I was having a damn headache. Boston, anyone was losing to the Celtics last night.
Yeah, anybody. I mean, they got the championship vibes, got their rings. Did you see, by the way, Al Horford was saying, he was telling people, he was mic'd up and he was telling his teammates that he got his ring size wrong, like he told them the wrong thing and his ring was too big. Or maybe it was too small. I can't remember, but like
too big, too small.
Phrasing. No, but I thought that was funny. Real quick, I was just gonna say on the LeBron thing, I was one of the people who, like, I didn't like the way they kind of went about, not so much that it was like nepotism. I think that's always going to exist, but more so just like, I didn't like that Bronny tried to play this game of like, no, I'm not going to follow my dad. Like, I can go anywhere. I need to get out from his shadow. And then he did the exact thing we thought he was going to do. Like, just don't act like we're idiots is my biggest thing. But I don't care that he went there. I think it's a cool story. I think it's awesome.
Almost and it was down the three, by the way. Like, it was a driving kick from LeBron to Bronny.
Yeah, that would have been cool. But no, I think it's a cool moment and it's worth remembering and it was worth watching last night. But more so the thing that kind of struck me last night, Spence, like, I almost want to watch as many LeBron games as possible this year, because it hit me all of a sudden that, like, his career is leading. Like what's left of his career. And I know we had the luxury of seeing him in person here in Cleveland for all those years, and we'll never forget that, especially the championship season. But the idea that, like, we got to witness maybe the greatest, it's arguable. Some people are going to say Jordan. I get that. But the greatest player of all time, and that his, like, throughout my entire life, I don't remember as much of Jordan because I was like, years like 1 through 8 were like his peak years. Like, I don't remember a lot from when I was that age. But with LeBron, it's like I've watched his entire career. So I don't know. There was kind of like this appreciating feeling for me of like, I got to try to consume as much LeBron content, as much LeBron games as possible this year, because I don't know how many more he has left. And this has been a fun sort of ride to be a part of, but also to follow.
He turns 40. He turns 40.
Yeah,
here
at
in
the
a
start of
couple
next year.
months. And let me just, my initial thought when I saw Bronny come onto the court, I'm old. that was my initial thought.
That's fair.
I'm old.
That is fair. We all have those moments.
One last thing, just
Sure,
going back
quick.
to that Celtics game. Man, if that's not the blueprint to how you play 5-out offense, I don't know what is.
Yeah, they look
just
good.
constant moving. It's not just that they were passing the ball around and shifting the defense. It's that they were passing the ball and knowing they were passing the ball to the next guy after that.
And Jason Tatum looked good.
Yeah,
with that new shot.
Gosh, and everyone talking about revenge tour. I hope that that was not the result of not playing in the Olympics, because if it was, then it's going to be a long season for a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference. But and they didn't even have Kristaps Porzingis out there, mind you. But that kind of ball movement, to understand how special that is to do that for as long as they did, for how long they sustain it. Because stagnancy happens throughout a basketball game. It's natural. It even happened to the damn Warriors and the Spurs and all that. And those are some of the best executing teams that we've ever seen. But if Boston's going to execute like that, and the stat sheet says they shot 48%, but reality, they shot like 60, 70% from deep. If they didn't miss those last 13.
Yeah, they were just trying to set the record. Yeah.
Yep. So just kudos to them. And that's a blueprint, though. That's a blueprint for any team trying to play 5-out offense, and that's big time. And then, like, as for the Lakers too, the Lakers, they did not execute as well as I thought they could have in the half court, and did not shoot well. But that offensive rebound and transition offense, that's something you should look out for from the Cavs.
Good stuff as always, Spence. We appreciate your insight into the game. I am looking forward to many more episodes of this. I apologize, we went a little longer than we expected, but I thought it was good content, so hopefully it was worth it for you guys. To the 400 plus people who are watching in real time, most likely on Twitter.
No,
we appreciate you. We hope that you'll join us for future episodes of this podcast that we're getting rolling. We are going to figure out a name at some point here, and obviously we implore you to follow along with all of the coverage of the Cavaliers this season with Cleveland Cavaliers on SI at the YouTube channel. We'll have post game reports, practice reports throughout the season. Pre-game stuff going on. I know John Rutter's is going to sort of head up a lot of that stuff. So very much looking forward to interacting with you guys and talking about the Cavs all season long, both here and at Cleveland Cavaliers on SI, si.com/NBA/Cavaliers more specifically. Thank you all for watching, for Spence, for myself, for the duo that is Spencer Squared. We'll be back.
Subscribe.
Yes, subscribe, and we will be back talking to you guys probably after the game tonight. So appreciate you, and have a great Wednesday. We'll see you on the other side of whatever happens tonight between the Cavs and the Raptors. Thanks, guys.